Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm very excited to say that we sold out in the first about 10 hours or something, which is really incredible. And my name is Dean van Dugteren. I'm on Twitter and GitHub as DeanPress. I'm a developer at City of Zion. The first couple of minutes are going to be, or first hour is going to be about developing on Neo, creating smart contracts. And I'm going to start off by saying why I am so passionate about Neo and why I think it's the one. So when people ask me about Neo who are not very familiar about blockchain and they're interested in smart economy, I ask them to think about the time before we had smartphones. We had traditional phones. And traditional phones were clunky and slow, and there were no applications at all. They were good at one thing, and that was talking from one phone to another. And then we had the introduction of truly smartphones. And those introduced incredible speed, real applications, games. There were new ways to socialize with each other. And now our phones are even as smart as that there's little AI things inside of our phones doing God knows what, which is a good thing. They're really smart, so that's cool. So now, when you think about that and that introduction, the revolution in phones, I asked them to think about the same way about economy. After the introduction of modern banking, the economy hasn't really changed. It hasn't really revolutionized in the same way that an industry like phones going to smartphones had. But that changes now, because the same way that phones have evolved into smartphones, economy is now evolving into smart economy. And Neo is at the forefront of that. So Neo introduces new ways to create smart contracts. It introduces new ways for digital assets. It allows you to create things that hold true value while still being completely digital. It also, with the way that data works on the blockchain, Neo makes sure that digital data truly exists. And developers can create things for you, for an Internet of Things, and for everything else. So the same way we had smartphones, we now also have smart economy. And it basically introduces the same things for an economy the same way that it did for smartphones. So that is why I believe Neo is the one, but this also applies to lots of other projects in blockchain. So why Neo specifically, for me personally? So as a developer, I am incredibly excited about the ease of development. Smart contracts can be built in Python, C#, Java, even later JavaScript and Go. Basically, any modern language can be compiled into a smart contract on Neo, which is really cool because you don't have to learn any new languages. There's an incredible community. It's ran by on-chain, and of course, there's the blockchain is incredibly fast. Which brings me to the first point I want to go into, Python. I'm a big fan of Python now with the for smart contracts. And when people ask me why Python, I like to make the comparison that it reads and it writes like a language that's made for kids or for preschoolers to learn programming. But it allows for the complexity of an incredibly complex applications. I have no idea what this is, by the way, but it looks complex, so I thought it works with my agenda. So Python is definitely a recommendation. It's humanly readable. There's an incredibly active Python community, and it's just really easy to pick up. My next point is the community. As I said, the community is incredible. And a common misconception that's around Neo is that people think it's a Chinese project built for a Chinese community, etc. But it's very global. And I think the fact that for the workshop alone we already have such a big audience, I think it proves that the community is in fact incredibly global and not localized at all. There's an active development community from Europe and the United States and just basically everywhere else in the world. If you're in the Discord channel or Reddit or know City of Zion people, there's a lot of Western developers, and there's also a lot of Eastern developers as well. So, yeah. It's also the most searched for cryptocurrency in the Netherlands. And not only that, it's one of the most searched keywords in the Netherlands. That's how popular it is here, only just here. City of Zion. City of Zion is a global community of developers, mostly from Europe and the United States. There's developers from all over the world. Me personally, I'm from the Netherlands, but there's also developers from Austria, Spain, Germany, etc. There's also some City of Zion developers here. So you can talk to them maybe at the networking event, etc. And then there's the core team, which I think is really cool. Neo is built by OnChain, which is a groundbreaking company in blockchain technology. Under the leadership of Da Hongfei, OnChain just makes partnerships and major breakthroughs in blockchain technology pretty much every day. Another thing which I think is really cool about the core team is that they really listen to the community. Developers and community members can talk to the people behind Neo, to OnChain directly. And if you look at the GitHub, you can see discussions and issues being posted, which are basically feature requests, etc. And they're actively communicating with the community, and updates and in their core, in the Neo core, in smart contracts, etc., are made with the community's feedback. So they really listen, which is really cool. And there's an exponential growth in development. I want to point out again, there's City of Zion. There's also NEL, which is basically like City of Zion, also an independent development group, but they're based in China. And if you go to, for example, the City of Zion GitHub account, you can find a lot of projects being made. For example, the NeoPython source is being made by City of Zion. And there's tons of commits being made, and there's, I think, about 60 City of Zion developers active right now, and there's just a lot of updates and new features. And you can see them every week on City of Zion's Medium account, which is medium.com/@cityofzion. They post a weekly, I think, report on new features and such, which is awesome. So I'm going to display how I would make a smart contract and give a little cool use case. It's going to be simple, and I'm going to, yeah. So the idea I had for a simple smart contract, to keep it simple but not make it like a boring thing, like a guest book or a hello world or whatever. I thought we'd do something which might be a fun use case, like a digital product licensing. So by that I mean you have products and publishers, and they can register products, and then they can hand out licenses to other users for those products. But then what's cool, where the blockchain could come in, is that users are able to transfer the license they possess to other users as well. And by users, I mean addresses. So users can log into their address, and they can see their licenses, and then they can transfer that license from one user to another. So I thought that might be a cool little thing, which is pretty simple, and also a good idea to about how smart contract development would work with Python. So before I start, I always like to make a little chart. That's kind of a developer thing. It kind of explains all the features, functions that I need to integrate before I get started with writing. Also being a developer, when I made the smart contract, afterwards I had a bunch of other features as well, and those are not included, but I'll still demonstrate them anyway. So, for everyone interested, I'm going to show the process of setting up your own private net, setting up your NeoPython environment, and then create a smart contract. I'm going to go through the first part pretty quickly. So the first thing you need is the Neo private net with gas, which is made by Metachris and other members by City of Zion. Basically, the Neo private net lets you set up 4 virtual nodes in one virtual machine, for example, on your own server, on DigitalOcean, or wherever you like to host your servers. It's a Docker image, so you import it, you run this command right here, and you have your server. Open up your ports, and you can access it from anywhere in the world, and you have your own private net. Next thing you need is NeoPython. You can find that on the City of Zion GitHub. There's documentation there as well, and it's really well documented. You need to run some commands, set up your repositories and everything. And then you set up your virtual Python environment. To do that, you run this command right here. I already did that, so I'm not gonna do that right now, but I am gonna activate it. So if you're familiar with, for example, with pip, or not with pip, but with Node.js, pip is like the node package manager for Python. So that installs all the packages you need to get ready, get started. So I'm not going to do that either, but that's going to be NeoPython. So when you have it installed, you just run Python 3 prompt -p for the private net. Before we do that, you need to configure the private net as well. You do that by editing your private net file and setting your seed list IP addresses to pointed to the IP of the server you set up for your private net. So you only edit it here, then run the command Python 3 prompt.py-p, and you're in NeoPython, and you're going to be syncing up with your private blockchain. All right. So that's how you set up your private net and then get into NeoPython and to interact with it. You can see some the commands here. These are all the commands you can do to interact with your private net. It basically allows for everything that you normally have with, for example, the Neo C# GUI. This allows you to do it in your command line with Python. Neo1, I'll get into that later. Next thing you need to build a smart contract, and we're going to get into that now, is NeoBOA. So when you set up a new smart contract environment, you install NeoBOA as a package for it. See if we can get that up here. All right. Going to set up a virtual environment for my new smart contract project. So what you do when you have your smart contract environment, which is just which is the same, set up your virtual environment for Python and then activate it. You're going to install NeoBOA. You do that with this. I'm not going to do that now because it might use up bandwidth or take a long time. But that's basically how you install it. And that NeoBOA is basically the package that interprets Python functions and lets you import Python functions that interact with or are used by the Neo virtual machine. So basically everything you need, like storage, getting the blocks, getting Unix time, and all that other stuff for your smart contracts. So I'm not going to do it from scratch. I'm just going to go over the smart contract I built because for the workshop we don't have a lot of time. So with BOA installed, you can import the functions like this. To be able to see what kind of functions you can import, you can just go to the Neo documentation for the virtual machine. See if I can find it here. Yep. So you can just find that on the Neo docs. It's also on the Neo developer wiki. You can find all the imports here and functions here, etc. So, for example, with runtime, you can see check witness, and then you can see the documentation for it here. It uses C# for examples, but it basically the same arguments apply for Python. So for our basic licensing smart contract, we need just a few things. We need check witness. Check witness is a fun little function that lets you verify that the user who's interacting with the smart contract is who they say they are. So basically, normally, if you want to know a user's which wallet is interacting with you with the smart contract, you make the user set their first argument as their address or public hash, and then run check witness on it, like here, check witness, and then put it in as an argument, and it'll return true if the address is indeed the one that it's interacting with, and false if it's not. Then from the storage, we're going to import get context, which tells storage that you're using the current block, and then put and delete and get, which is all storage related. You put something in the storage, and you receive something from the storage, and you delete something from the storage. And then concat is just to concatenate two strings, so put two strings together. All right. So to get started with your smart contract, you have your main function. That is the function that is called when you run the smart contract. Now for this smart contract, I want to make sure that the first argument is always the user script hash. The second argument is always a product ID, because we're always working with a product for our licensing system. And then the third is always, when used, another script hash, and that is for transferring the project or a license from one user to another. So I like to make definitions for everything. It's also necessary in some parts. So first I'm going to say user hash is the first argument. It's always going to be that way. And I always want the user to be who they say they are and not lie to us, so I'm going to check that that is the correct user. Now here comes the fun readability part. I'm going to go through a bunch of these kind of quickly, but if you take your time and just read it, even someone with less experience in programming could kind of make out, especially when it's commented well enough, you're going to be able to figure out what everything does. So it could read as a normal readable contract. So the second argument is product ID, and then I'm going to make a user license, and that is always going to be a user hash plus the product ID. So that just puts the two strings together. That's a good idea, thank you. I have never done that before. I like small text personally, so let's see. Does anyone see that? Oh, there we go. Right, it's just this. Boom. That big enough for you, huh? I'll make it a little bit smaller. There we go. That's okay? Yeah, cool. It's just to put two strings together. Well, if you're, I'm not going to answer every question, but I'll answer this one. Concatenate allows you to add, for example, an integer to a string as well. If you're going to use concatenate and you use plus, etc., you might accidentally add something up, right? So concatenating makes sure that it's always just going to be the first string on the left and the second one on the right, and it'll always be that way. All right. So the third argument is not always there, so we're going to check if there's 3 arguments in total. That means we're interacting with a different contract as well. And if not, it's going to be just for us. Then we're going to continue. So when we go back to the main function, we have an operation, which is a string. That's going to be the function that the user will be calling. And we have an argument. Or a list of arguments, and that's going to be that list that I just talked about, the user script hash, product ID, etc. So that's going to be a list. So registering a product is pretty simple. If the operation is register product, you're going to use the get function, so you use get. Then for the first parameter, use get context to interact with the correct storage. And then we supply the product ID, which we made with that little concat function right there. And if it doesn't exist, then we register it with the put command by supplying the product ID and the user hash. That is how you register a product. Then we have the licensed product. So that's what a product owner does to register a product. Then we have licensed product. It basically does the same, but instead now we check if we're the owner. So that uses an isOwner function. I put that above the main definition, the main function here. IsOwner, supply product ID. It basically uses checkWitness to check if the product ID that's registered is indeed the product owner. I'm going to put this online in GitHub as well, so you can just take your time and kind of go through it. You can also ask me questions on Twitter or Discord or wherever. I'm pretty much always online, so. Oh, GitHub, it's not on now, but it's going to be online, but it's going to be my GitHub. It's going to be github.com/deanpress, Press, which is also my Twitter, by the way. I'm going to shield my own Twitter right now. All right. So we have the licensed product, so we check if we're the owner. And then if we are indeed the owner of the product, then we can hand out a license to an address. So the requested license, that's going to be just the name. I mean, the requested license that we set that up here. So if it's going to be for a different user, it's going to be the second or the third argument, and then the requested license is a concatenated string. And then the product is licensed. And then I'm going to go to the last function, which is transfer license. We're going to check again if we're the license owner. And then we're going to make sure that we, let's see. We're going to check that we're the license owner right here. And then we're going to check the third argument for the new user hash. We don't need this, by the way. We already programmed that before, so this is actually not necessary. And the way that the blockchain works, and this is fun, it's actually so simple to do a transaction for a digital asset. Making a transaction, if you launch a function, then it'll always go through from start to end. It will not stop halfway. That means that you don't need to have like really complicated ways to do transactions. You can just delete one ownership, so delete one license and then add another. And that will be a transfer because it'll be gone from your wallet and it'll be added to another wallet. And it cannot stop halfway. So a transaction cannot be, we deleted something and oops, something went wrong, so we now can't put the other one and now boom, the license is gone. So it's really simple. Just delete one thing and add another. So those are basically the functions. So in order to compile that, that's actually pretty simple. You okay, dude? Oops, need to be right here. So with NeoPython, you can actually make compile your smart contract really quickly using the build function. So you just enter build, and then go to your project. This is a lengthy little path here. Let's see if I did that correctly. I did not. There we go. There we go. And you have your AVM file. The AVM file is actually the actual bytecode for the smart contract. And then in order to deploy it, that's really simple as well. You just do import contract, and then paste your compiled smart contract. So you do that right here. And then it's going to ask us to open a wallet. We need to use need to have a wallet. So open your wallet file first. You can also import it with the WIF and whatever. I'm using the Neo private net wallet. It's the one that has all the Neo in the world and all the gas. Not in the public net, don't worry, it's our private net. And then we can import it. So it's going to ask us for a couple of arguments. Next to the path, we're going to need the parameters that it accepts. Now, you can find the parameters that the numbers represent on the Neo documentation as well. 07 means it accepts a string, and 10 is a list. So that's the operation and the arguments. And then what it returns, in our case, it's going to return an integer, but I'm just going to put in bytecode because that works as well. Whether we need storage, that's true. And dynamic invoke, that's a cool new function. Can you guys see that, by the way, or is that kind of small? I'm going to... Okay, well, deal with it. So the dynamic invoke, it allows us to use smart contract hashes and interact with them in our own smart contract, even though the new smart contract is not yet invoked. So simply said, if we ever, it basically allows us to update functions in our smart contract. But it's still secure, so but that's for a different workshop. So we need to enter some details. I'm just going to do Amsterdam 1.0, our name. I'm going to make this a little big so you guys can see. Team Press on Twitter. Our email, in case you want to contact me, which is hello@dean.press. And then a description. Let's use some cool buzzwords like licensing system on a distributed ledger, allowing for decentralized interactions. Yeah, with AI, good idea. Yeah, with AI and quantum resistance. ICO tomorrow, raising 1.5 billion. Let's go. All right. So it's going to give us a script hash where, and let's see, we actually, it says test invoke failed. Not sure why. We didn't change anything. Oh, it's because I already deployed this one. So before, prior to this network. So I'm just gonna copy this one. This is a script hash that it returns. That's going to be the smart contract hash that people will be interacting with. So yeah, we can interact with that using test invoke. That basically, it does a test invoke, and then you can authorize it to make the transaction as well. So this is for debugging purposes and for interacting with it yourself. But you can also obviously interact with it from a front end. I'll introduce that in a minute. I'm not going in depth on that, but it's possible, obviously. So we're going to supply the smart contract hash and then our parameters, and that's basically it. So we want to register a product. Then the first argument was our address. So the smart contract can verify that we are indeed the address that we say that we have, which is this one. And then I'm going to show you how not to do this, by the way. We're going to set up Internet Explorer. We're going to register Internet Explorer as a product on the blockchain. So this is not going to work. And that is, I'm going to point this out for everyone who's interested in starting to get to development. Don't put a space there, or you're going to lose hours trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. So you put it in like that, and then you're going to see that it's a license for us. And something is going wrong. Ah, nice, yeah. Thank you. So that basically, and now I just canceled Python, the prompt.py. So now we can see that you that it works. if it's not the correct function, it's not going to do anything. Thank God. Okay, register product. Please open a wallet. Password COZ for City of Zion. There we go, test invoke. So another cool thing is, even though I just went out of NeoPython and went back in, the private net is still running. So that's a good part about blockchain as well. So now we can see some logs that we had. I'm just going to read this out for people who can't see it. It shows us we're authorized. It shows us that we're not giving a third argument, so the license, the function is applied to us alone. Then we're calling register product. Internet Explorer returns an empty byte array, which means it's not in use, and it's going to connect it to our script hash. So this is basically the byte array version of our own wallet public hash or address. And then it shows that the product is registered, and it returns true. So in order to authorize that, I'm going to enter the password for the wallet, and now we are sending it to the blockchain for processing. Now that might, take a few seconds or a minute on the private net. In the meantime, I will show you a little bit about Neo 1, which is a really incredible project being made by creator of Neo Tracker, which is a big Neo website, Block Explorer. Neo 1 is introducing a bunch of projects and tools for development, and for really easy development. Basically, I've already tried out some things. I already released some things. They have a CLI, and you can invoke, or you can basically create a starter project that's connected with a React front end. And it already has a smart contract as well. So if you want to get started with interacting with the front end as well, you enter one command. It basically sets up a private net. It sets up a front end and your smart contract, and you can just start developing from there. They're also introducing smart debugging through VS Code, etc. It just makes everything so easy. It's just like any other web development project. So you don't need to mess around with a bunch of things. You can just get started with smart contracts. So that's cool. I want to point it out. The website is neo-1.io. All right, so the product is now registered. So if we're going to check, or now we need to set up a license. So in my case, I'm just going to do license product, or was it, I'm sorry, it's register license. That's a bad function name, by the way, don't do that. Register license. We're not supplying a third argument, so we're going to register the license for ourselves, the product owner. So authorize the licenses for us, and let's see, it's returning false again. Did I do something wrong here? Maybe I did the wrong function name again. It is license product, good. I'm better than I thought. All right, so let's not do that one. I should just put it. That was the wrong way to connect. Yeah, if you don't fill in your password, then it skips. I didn't want to send it to the blockchain, right? Hey, man. All right. The license product. So that's going to invoke our license product function on our smart contract. All right, there we go. License product, and it's going to add. It finds the product. It exists in Internet Explorer, and then it's going to register the license for us. So we're going to invoke that. And then we are good. This is going to send a license for our product. We're almost done, by the way. We're going to have a short break after this. And then we're going to get on with the presentations. So I'm just going to leave this open, maybe. Too soon, man. I'm going to just show you guys something else. NeoScan, for example, which is the Neo Block Explorer built by City of Zion. It's a really nice website as well. And it will show you everything you need to know about Neo. Looks like people are really liking this, this workshop. So there we go. The product is licensed. That's now on the blockchain as well. So let's see if we can get a license for someone else. Now this is not going to do any weird invocations. We don't need to send anything. I'm just going to run get license, and I'm going to supply a different address to see if someone owns it. So oops, not here. Let's get a second address here, and let's not do the space because that'll destroy our invocation. There we go. There's no license owned by that user. So you know what? I'm a nice guy. I'm going to give this guy a free license for Internet Explorer. Don't ask me why. So I'm just going to call transfer license now, which is going to remove the license that we just made from our ownership and then add it for someone else. In this case, the address that we just copied. So transfer license is going to invoke that. So I'm going to go through here. Again, we're authorized. We say we are with the first argument. It checks that the license, our license exists. So that's those byte arrays over there. It says license exists. The user is indeed the owner of that license, which is us. And then it's going to, it says there, storage delete. It's going to delete our license from the storage. And then it's going to add a new license to the storage. And that will basically, there we go, it is now destroyed from our wallet and added to the other one. So now I'm going to open our other wallet. I think it was called privnet2.wallet. Yep. It's not our password. This one goes to, there we go. There we go. So now let's see if we are indeed the owner of this license. So we're going to get the license for ourselves again for Internet Explorer on our different wallet. So I'm going to make that the first argument. Get license for Internet Explorer. So we're going to get our own license. And there we go. It returns our script hash, which means we are indeed now the owner of Internet Explorer. We did a successful transfer. We registered Internet Explorer, we licensed it to ourselves, and then we transferred it to a different wallet. So that's the basic premises of smart contract programming for Neo in Python. I hope people want to get started with that. Another thing which I thought was cool is that this license, there's new features which you can build. There's a front end that you can connect it to. So there's a lot of cool things you can do. It's still possible to register for the Neo developer competition, and there's also City of Zion developer competitions. So if anyone wants to form a little team, feel free to contact me, and we'll build this thing together. We can build something cool of it and submit it to all the competitions. Thank you for listening, and we're going to take a short break, and after that we're going on with the presentations. Thank you.